Hello and welcome to American Amnesia. I am your host, Cliff Garner. I apologize for not having come around for a little while here. I've been really busy and feeling a bit under the weather as well. The season's changing, the pollen and all that, but there's other things that I've been having this nagging cough that I'm trying to shake. I think it's finally going away. And timing too. School's in full swing, and we're really pretty much at the midterm point right now. So I've been rather busy with some other things too. So at any rate, I did want to grab a few minutes here and try to nail out a little something here. I was watching a Styxhexenhammer666, who's one of my favorites online. He's a very astute commentator on the news, which is his shtick is a little different than where I'm at. I'm looking more at macro issues, and he's looking at those too, and I'm also looking at minor ones, the daily things too, but I don't comment on them as much. Whereas he does rather regularly, and he's done a really good job. The past year, he's been one of the people I go to for information, and in his insight. Not only that, his sense of humor. He reminds me of people I know, a lot of people I know, and including myself at times. He's quite funny too. So at any rate, he had a video today. I will put in the links. The first rumblings of Trump's major comeback. And this is something that I think a lot of people aren't noticing, perhaps, because of all the cacophony. Cacophony. Actually, in either case, it does mean bad or crap noise or crap sound. So it is a rather funny word. But at any rate, the cacophony of the press and everything, and then it crescendos, especially when they're not doing such a good job, and then it's obvious that they're losing. So when that happens, they get louder, and the Democrats the same way. So right now things are pretty shrill. They're just looking for any shit to hit the wall and stick and see what it is. The problem is that it looks like the wall doesn't hold too much crap and do a very good job of it. Or maybe it's just that they're throwing it at the wrong person. They failed. One of Hillary's problems is that she elevated him in order to really try to pole vault over him, and that's a very bad technique. Had he been a stronger candidate going out the gate, one that had a greater political background, then perhaps emphasizing the fight with him would have been a little more sensible. But instead, she made people curious about what he was saying. I was one of them. Mario and I went to the Trump rally here in Springfield, the very first one here, and he broke record attendance at the convention center downtown, which had never filled up like that, and it was jam-packed. And I listened to what he had to say, and I wasn't convinced, but at the same time, what I was struck by was a lot of the things that he was saying. If he were being honest, it would be enough. And not only that, it was actually something I'd been looking for. And that being said, with the way Johnson twisted and turned and made sure that he was Democrat in everything but name, he messed up. The Libertarians are not a substitute Democrat party. and that's what he made them into. And he turned me off from that. There was no way I was voting for Stein. And so things just evolved. And I hoped for the best and still do. But I'm seeing that there's quite a bit of a golden lining to this cloud. I mean, there's a lot of things that have gone right. The economy is perfectly fine. So at any rate, I was watching Styx's analysis, and he does a very good job, and he did. But there's some points that I wanted to get to that he didn't touch on. That the press isn't the only factor that tells us this, and there's so many other things that I've been noting, and he does too. He just doesn't go into the detail that I'm going to try to go into. But at any rate, that there are things that are happening, there are trends that are coming together that are very indicative of the idea that a corner has been turned, and the trajectory is changing even further. It's coming that way little by little, but this was a major creaking break that just recently occurred with the announcement of further information on uranium-1 and a few other things that have come out just recently. And this is not to mention the asshat, right? What's her name? The congresswoman that wanted to use that. What do you call them? Golden family. The family of a serviceman who died in action. That she was trying to use that phone call as a leverage against Trump. This is just ludicrous. And the first thing that I thought was, as soon as I saw her, that goofy little hat, and she wears one with every outfit. It's an ass hat. And I saw a meme with that, and I posted it. So it's like, she's ass hat. There's no if, and, or but about it. I mean, that's what she is. Excuse me. This is something that's going to stick with her until she probably goes to the grave. I mean, she's obviously an asshat, and there you have it. At any rate, the first thing that we should note, the deep state. When I first heard this term, it was in Turkey, and Erdogan was dealing against what is called the deep state. The deep state consists of a lot of different groups of people who are perennially involved in the matters of government. And they include economic elites. They include bureaucrats of all kinds, the justice system. Of course, you know, your legislative body and your executive offices. And where these responsibilities are divvied up, and you know, who's in charge of things like the police and things like this. These issues kind of can mutate from country to country, and put different strictures on who is in the deep state and what constitutes it, and how its jurisdictions and overlaps and everything else are maintained. But that's the thing, you know, it's the functioning bodies of the government itself, those who make it run economically and socially and culturally. And so you have things like, for example, Hollywood in America. This is actually it covers a greater deal of media expressions, I suppose you'd say, than just the movies and television even. It just overlaps all kinds of stuff, and it even includes, to a certain extent, the countercultural reactions against that establishment. Sundance, the Independent Film Festival, was an attempt to rein in those independent entities and movements to Hollywood, and that was really kind of when it happened, when Redford first started doing it, there was more reaction against it because he's part of the establishment. And there were those that were grateful for the opportunity to be exposed. But by the same token, what he was doing is he was also basically selling them out. But that's no surprise. That's usually what happens with any counter current, that there is an influx of government attention, or establishment attention. Probably should put it that way because it's not necessarily government. But that this attention will tend to sap the original strength of that movement, regardless of what it is, whether it's political, economic, or some type of media, music, fashion, whatever. You know, these are all in one way or another subordinated to the greater cultural powers. So when Sundance came around, it wasn't unanimously applauded, and still isn't. It shouldn't be. It is a tool for breaking down resistance and to causing a sellout. This is what happened to the punk movement. No sooner did it come out, it was pretty much subordinated to the fashion industry and to the music industry, and the corporations took over. And so you got the Police. I mean, they were a good band. I mean, I'm not going to knock their talent, but that's what they were all about. They were meant to funnel punks into the system. You had a few other groups that came around, and it was really quick. I mean, the punk movement really, it didn't kick in until 70, 77, 78. That's when it really got us going. And it went in different directions in America and the UK. UK was far more political. Radical politics in America had been subverted by the Democratic Party by then, by 76. And whereas in England, part of it actually became more radical. And they went to more of an anarchistic rather than communist rebellion, and it became violent. And in America, no, they shot at us. They would. Well, I didn't go to protests. I figured that was a waste of time. And the reason why was because it became police open fire. They just basically declared war on us. So that mechanism is always in place, and it has to be considered when we talk about what the deep state is. And the deep state is an elitist, and it's not a theory, it's a reality. It's an elitist structure within the pluralistic system of the United States. See, and that's the thing. One of the things that had been a safeguard in America was the pluralistic concept of the people, right? Basically, that there were several different strains of thought and ways of going about things that would, they would move around in their allegiances, but they would always make sure that that nobody really forced the subordination of the other strands of thought into submission. And this is something that during the Obama administration that was starting to fall apart. Obama was trying to basically continue where Bush and Bill Clinton had left off, and to create the entity that I call empire. And this entity is basically the U.S. as the capital of the world. And not that Trump's going to change that entirely. But what he's going to do is he's going to keep it from being all at the expense of the American people. That's what that's what Hillary Clinton was going to do. She was not going to change any of the policies of those two. The jobs would have continued to go overseas. Basically, they were going to put us on all on welfare and relegate us to secondary positions where our citizenship really didn't mean doodly squat, and bring in people from other countries to do all the work. That I think is a very hellish notion, and I've been opposing it all along. I didn't much like what I was seeing that way, but at the same time, I'm cynical enough to look at realpolitik and see, wow, look at what happened there. If they could take democracy and import it to Iraq, and to bring democracy everywhere, it's possible that they could actually bring about a golden age. That's what I saw. You had other people that saw similar things. Christopher Hitchens saw a golden age of atheism for him. For me, no. I saw where it would actually be a political and perhaps economic boon to the world, that this could actually work. Well, they made sure it didn't. And when the failings occurred in Iraq, I had to turn against it. And I don't know what I would have thought had I stayed here. But I was settling into a kind of a neocon perspective for a while there. But when I went overseas, I really didn't care about Democrat or Republican anymore. It was like, well, this is just nonsense. I mean, it's a one party. It's the others, the third parties. I want to see one of those come up to provide new ideas. But as far as I was concerned, I could have voted either way, and I did. I didn't really care. I didn't vote as much for the Democrats because I've actually become more conservative with age. But with the neocon neo-lib thing, I really didn't see that as being such a bad thing. And when I got over to, really when I was in China, it wasn't so much that I saw it there. But when I got to Turkey, I started talking to people who had lived through uh, the war there and the civil war there and the reactions that came later. And it could have been done so much better. And these living victims, that I was speaking to, I had no answer for them. And because of that, I reconsidered where I was going politically. And I came to really become an anti-interventionist. I really don't like our interventions so much. I don't have a problem at a certain point on a real politique level. And there are times that, okay, fine, go ahead and do it. But I do recognize those for what they are. I don't think that we should be in the business of exporting democracy any longer. I think that what we saw with Bush was bad enough. But when I was overseas and watched what Obama did, that was enough to change my mind on the issue forever. Because I did watch his wars, and he went everywhere, and people are going, well, what are these guys in Niger getting killed for? What are they doing in Niger? Well, they're in Niger, or Niger, if you prefer. They're over there because Obama went over there with the French several years ago. I think it was, 2013? They went to Mali, too. Why did they go there? Because the French went there, and it was a good chance for Obama to say, we're not going to get involved in Syria. That was the best move he ever made. See, he can't take credit for that because the public perception is so different. The public perception is so different. But he kept us out of Syria for a long time, even though he got Turkey embroiled in it, and he left him out to hang. See, this is how poor of a president he was. You have no idea how nasty Obama was. But they liked him because he was weaker. I mean, in some really key ways, a lot of people liked him because they could take advantage of him. He was an idiot. He didn't know how to negotiate. Look at what happened with Iran. What an idiot. So, anyway, the thing is that when Trump got elected, the economic elites were very divided at that time. Now, a lot of your press and stuff, they were delighted with Obama being there. They would have been very happy to change the Constitution, let him stay until he dropped. But they couldn't do that. They didn't bother with even trying to extend his term legally. Instead, they got on board with Hillary Clinton. And Hillary Clinton, she's probably been sitting in the background for a while now with all that money that they stole from Haiti. It was $10 billion there, and it's a couple billion between friends, right? And so with her in the background and purchasing her way towards her cheating Bernie Sanders out of the election, that boondoggle that was meant to look like a juggernaut, well, it lost. They didn't plan on that happening. They thought that by controlling the press and cheating in key places, that they would be able to get away with stealing the election, basically. They stole the primary. They got away with it. They had to fire Debbie Wasserman Schultz and a couple of other people in order to get over the hump to go to the election, but they did what they had to do. And so this that part of the elite was another issue, you know, the MSM, but they're part of the corporate structure. See, that's people don't want to think about it that way, but basically the press, as we have understood it, as they have erected it in their favor, freedom of the press has been an elite right. You had to be able to buy a press before you could actually indulge in that freedom. Now, the issue is further complicated, no matter how you look at it, by the person who avails himself of a press in order to expose their own ideas. Well, the market of ideas has always been limited by the ability to have those ideas aired, as it were. And I don't mean it in terms of putting it on TV or radio, but in terms of being able to be presented to the public. And presentation of those ideas requires that somebody somewhere allows that person to put their information out, or that they obtain the means themselves. This is not always as cut and dry as it sounds, because today, you know, all it takes is a computer and a word processor and a printer. I mean, that's all you need. You can put your ideas out there one way or another. You can pass pamphlets. You can go online. But in order to give that person a platform, there has to be some way of disseminating this idea. This is big business in a big way. And what you have now is you have Google, you have YouTube, you have Facebook, Twitter, and then you have some that are coming up kind of in reaction to the censorship that those have done to people within the framework. And we can argue all day about, you know, whether they have the right to do that or not. If they are the only means of disseminating such things, then they are by definition a monopoly, and they should be dismantled. Okay. If there are other platforms to come up and rival them, this is a continuation of the spirit of the market. This is also a continuation of the spirit of freedom as put in our Constitution, and should be encouraged. Because otherwise you're going to have to force some kind of equal time kind of thing. And they don't seem to be willing to do that. And they need to be brought into line. Otherwise they shouldn't be able to operate in the United States, the biggest market in the world. They are cutting their own throats. So anyway, the press, though, as we usually have understood it, has been newspapers, TV, radio, publications, publishing houses, and stuff of this sort. And those are owned by a smaller and smaller group of people. This is not a good thing. This has been a bad thing. It's been a bad thing to begin with, but nobody wants to do anything about it. Why? Because there's too much money, and they pay the money. They also use their influence and their ability to influence, and the psychological mechanisms and psychological army they have to manipulate people subliminally and every other way possible is part of the package. You know, they bring this to the table when they make a deal with say a political candidate. And Now, it had been where they were pretty much giving equal time, and now they're not. They have decided that, and this is because I understand that Obama did an executive order that released them from being bound by law to not propagandize the American public, and now they're doing this shamelessly. Shamelessly. This is the worst I've ever seen it in my whole life. And I've seen some stuff. Good grief, I remember the Nixon times. Good grief. But this is an economic thing. This is where money is made and everything else. So what we have is we have a perspective of those corporations that are directly involved in the media and that own media, that seem to have a consensus against Donald Trump. Why? They liked the idea of empire as it was spelled out with the Clintons and with the Bushes and with Obama, and that this sort of welfare warfare machine with the open borders and the massive movements of people and material and money without borders. They didn't care about other countries and what they did, but as long as they could move their stuff without any question, they were fine with that. Now we have somebody in place that's actually wanting to stop that. This is kind of coming out the other way. This is a turnaround, and in which there is accountability for what comes across the border into the United States from elsewhere. See, this has to be done. Otherwise, what you're advocating, whether or not you realize it, is child trade, for one thing, where they're buying and selling children and moving them around like crazy and no accountability. People moved around without any accountability, creating a subclass in the United States. How are you going to rationalize that? That's slavery. And in a lot of cases, it's recognized as being such. You see about these cases about Saudis that move over here and they pick these people up and they abuse them like they do slaves back in Saudi Arabia. Hello? They're not entirely getting the wrong impression. That's why they don't want to fix anything. That's why the United States is in the condition that it is. And everything is slowly kind of falling apart. The bridges are falling apart. But they don't come here. They don't want to come here to run for office. They want to run around California and New York and just fly over everything except for maybe Chicago or St. Louis. Now, they'll drop into the main city and hopefully it's in a decent enough condition to where they can get around. But they don't care about the rest of the country. They don't care about the bridges. They don't care about jack shit. But there isn't everybody in the United States that has money that feels that way. Some of them are quite wealthy. Some of them are willing to work with either side. In fact, I'd say the biggest part of them are in the long run. Well, what you have is you have a lot of people that have the money that are finally kind of turning around. And what you had, let's go back to FDR. And I'm going to do an episode on this sometime. But with FDR, what you had was a person from the upper class who was a traitor to his class. And he actually recognized that the middle class was where the emphasis should be. And he took the philosophy of the time, basically a collectivist / socialist type of framework, was the way he kind of saw it. And he started imposing that in certain areas as key industries in the U.S. and that was FDR. And FDR angered a lot of people. And they actually, in reaction, were going to overthrow the government. They shot Tony Cermak. He was sitting next to Cermak, and they killed him. But they missed. Cermak was the mayor of Chicago. So I don't see a whole lot of difference between what he did and what Trump is doing now. I really don't. There isn't a whole lot of difference. But there was a point where it kind of turned a corner. And what had happened with FDR was that there was a thing called the businessman's plot. And whether it actually was a true event or not is really pretty much secondary. It implicated enough people in the system who were opposing him, the big money people in the system opposing him, that they were no longer going to be a problem. And they're like, oh, no, this is all nonsense. We didn't do anything of the sort, but here, let's give you help here. He put them in a position to where they didn't have a whole lot of choice but to go along with his agenda, at least without too much complaint. I think that's what you're seeing right now. I mean, that there's this, I don't want to say that it's necessarily organized, because it doesn't have to be. But there's this resistance that comes from a certain economic position, but it also involves other things. And this divide in the economic elite is one of the things that has been driving the so-called resistance. And sooner or later it's going to break down. And what you'll notice is that you'll find a lot of people like George Soros and other basically parasites and bankers. The bankers actually have a job, but the parasites are kind of a secondary, second tier of money manipulators. And you'll find that really that's where the bulk of it's coming from. And I have the feeling that they realize that I think Trump's going to go after them in the long run. And don't be surprised. Soros just put in $18 billion to resist Trump. That's massive. So these economic elites were always divided. Some of them have always been basically for him. A lot of your regional and local successful businesses that they might be worth $1 billion or better. But a lot of them are a few million. They're good enough size to where the government here would just basically devastate them with taxes, especially in a state like Illinois here. But the thing is this is where the real generation of jobs is in some of these industries that they're attacking. And not only that, one of the things about the unions didn't used to be for unlimited immigration. Now you have a group like SEIU who basically wants to unionize, just about anybody, street garbage pickers, I mean, they'll unionize them if they could. It's kind of pathetic. But the other unions actually represent trades and and workers of a different type. You know, these are often skilled labor, and even semi-skilled or even a certain unskilled. You know, I was a laborer. I carried a card. Thing is that those types of unions themselves really wouldn't have a whole lot of use for having a lot of illegals here. Legal, yeah, but not illegal, because they want to maintain a higher wage. And see, this is where the unions in the past used to do their good. You know, there was a good thing. You know, they were able to help people make more money, to have insurance policies, all this stuff. That all went to pot. Why? Because they decided that they wanted to make us into changeable pieces. And so this outlook that has been going on for a long time within the two parties, really one party, the power party. And you have a few that are kind of off to the side. I'd say Tulsi Gabbard's a good example of a good Democrat. And the Republicans, they've had to do some changes. They're getting knocked all around the room. The anti-Trumpers are, and that's not over yet. And really, those anti-Trumpers mostly belong with the establishment Democrats. They actually should be one party. And then from there, we could actually start to actually perceive a much wider, much greater, deeper, significant spectrum of ideas. We would perceive it very quickly because it'd be very easy to see. And not only that, if the power party had the representation that it really actually appeals to, there would be massive change in this country because people would reject that policy. It's been foisted on us. And it's time that we take the two parties and dismantle them. There is no real static political party that has an idea. They've hoodwinked you. So anyway, the divide in the economics is eventually going to come to a point where people realize that the economy is doing fine. Actually, this is a good time. Just because somebody doesn't steal from everybody else and stick it in their own pocket and walk away and say, I won. Is that the point of economics anyway? Is that what that's all about? If it is, I don't want anything to do with it. Matter of fact, whoever's going to stick it in their pocket, I want to go after that son of a bitch. I could go on with this, but the thing is at that point, it's going to show where the corner is turned. And it is turning. Believe me, it's turning. And it's turning in a big way. And right now, I just got a thing in the mail from a health insurance company. I haven't had health insurance for a while now. That's not it. They're looking for my business just like they did when I went bankrupt. Good morning. Maybe the healthcare industry is going to find that the best way to insure people is to allow competition in insurance. That's where it should be. That's where it should be. Make more doctors. Hello. Make more doctors. Let's promote doctors in the United States just like Castro did in Cuba. We can export doctors. We should be exporting lawyers now. They're just too busy picking us apart. Start sending some of these lawyers overseas. I mean, there's a lot of good cases to be won in international law. And there's some places where some justice could be done. Oh yeah. There is justice to be done. They're not doing it here. They're competing too tightly. Well, we need more doctors. We need more doctors. The price will go down. And they'll do just fine economically. Amazing. Second thing, and I'm not going to get to everything I was going to do. I'm going to have to do another one on this. The second thing is that the MSM narratives are falling apart. And even worse, they're just downright boring. And Styx really went into this quite a bit, and for good reason. It's a fact. They're not getting any leverage whatsoever. And not only that, these false narratives are false. My Russia is gone. They're still playing with it. I mean, Mueller's still there. I mean, and he's trying his damnedest. But there's nothing there. There's nothing there. He's as empty a suit as Obama. And now things are coming out about him that it actually shows that he had a limited shelf life, and now he's starting to stink. So this isn't going to last too much longer with the Russia thing. That he stole the election? How? How did Trump steal the election? He didn't have the inside track. Clinton did. Hillary Clinton had the inside track. She had the establishment behind her. She had 3 people go down as head of the Democratic National Committee in quick order. And then even Donna Brazile couldn't hold on to it. She wasn't put in there to hold on to it. She was only interim. But the fact is, they had 4 people. And Brazile was implicated in other things and lost her job with CNN. And you're going to tell me that there's nothing there? Hey, Snowflake, get a fucking clue. Get a fucking clue. I hear people, oh, don't call me Snowflake. Don't act like one. You're an entitled idiot. And you sit there and you whine after somebody comes after you and says what the truth is. But the worst thing of all, it's bad enough that they're lying. It's bad enough that they can't hold the narrative together. It just unravels every time they try to put it together. But they're boring. We don't want to hear it anymore. We've heard the same crap with no further evidence. We hear the same complaints. Yeah, you know, I wasn't real hot on the fact that Trump didn't release his tax returns. But you know something? Big deal. Get over it. Get over it. At least he didn't cheat Bernie Sanders out of the nomination. With the collusion of the press. And the collusion of the party. They have the right to pick whoever they want. Okay, fine. You know, it's a club. You know, I keep telling people that. Political parties are clubs. It's like being a Freemason or something. You know, you go, you pay your dues and you go to the meetings and you get drunk, you know. That's what they do. I have no use for it. So they pick whoever they want. But, you know, the fact is that they've made it sound like they don't, that they have to abide by certain rules. And if they're not going to abide by those rules, they're screwed. And they screwed themselves. guess what? You screwed yourselves, Democrats. Big time. And you don't want to pay that money back to the Bernie people? There is a consequence. There's a lot of consequences. It won't hurt my feelings to see you disappear, especially here in Illinois. I'm hoping for that. I didn't used to. I do now. I never did care for the two-party system. I didn't think it was a good idea. I've always disliked that idea. It is not a shoehorn, or it is not a straitjacket to lock us up in. And I wish they'd quit treating it like one, because it's not something, there was nothing written in stone to establish that. The parties are kind of a incidental kind of thing that came along. That they weren't necessary. They still aren't. And it won't hurt my feelings to see them disappear. And that leads me to the third point. This, I'm going to have to end it. Really kind of just not getting very far on this. But the Democrats are discombobulated. They're just bug-eyed nuts. But really what had happened is they've taken a blow right there between the eyes, and they're cross-eyed and staggering around, and they're not ready to fall over, maybe dead. That's what's happening. They don't even know what hit them. But what hit them, what's bringing them down, let's put it this way. What's bringing them down is the fact that they have been getting away with murder for a long time. And it's not like the Republicans didn't too. But the thing is with the 2012 election, and when they cheated Ron Paul, they had to deal with the consequences of that. And what had happened in the Republicans is that they had the failure of the party, of the establishment party. And they were fighting against the more populist rising that came up, the Tea Party in particular. And I remember hearing all the Democrats yelling about the Tea Party. It's like, what is your problem? This is grassroots. These are people from the rank and files coming up and saying what they think. Oh, no, the party made that. No, they didn't. Now you know that they didn't. Get over it. Now the facts come out. The fact is, it was a rising from the base. You don't have to like it, but that's a fact. You had the Occupy movement, and the Democrats tried to get in front of that parade, just like the Republicans got in front of the parade with the Tea Party. It didn't work. It didn't work. And really, that was largely to the credit of certain factions within the Occupy movement, which really was never a movement. It didn't coalesce around anything. But it was an expression of more of a leftist, libertarian mostly, but there were other things. There were communists too, and the Antifa people were running around there. But the thing is that they didn't get in front of that parade. And they weren't following. And really, the Tea Party wasn't following. Or at least it didn't continue to follow. Now, things are reversed in the Republican Party, and actually the base has taken over. What you have in the Democratic Party is that the establishment is strangling any resistance. And the progressives are actually they're not being expelled, but they are being relegated to the back seat. You know, your free thinking within the Democratic Party is almost at an end. And that's a very sad comment to make. And I really don't like noting that, but the fact is that that's exactly what's happening. That's why I'd say they are destroying themselves, and they are. There's other things going on there, but I'm going to leave at that point, and we'll return. I wanted to get something up, and I wanted to discuss this issue in particular because it strikes me as being important. And I'm about halfway through my list, but at any rate, I will have to pick up where I left off. So until then, folks, which I hopefully next couple days we'll have the next one out. But until then, take care.